Patrick from Outrageous Insight, and I am delighted today to be joined by a great friend of Outrageous, who is Kristi Spence. Kristi, how are you?
Thanks, Patrick. I'm so happy to be here. I'm doing great. I'm feeling, I guess, hopeful is what I would say for this morning. It's brisk. I had a lovely run this morning and I get to do this to kick off my day. So, good times.
Fantastic. And for those who don't know Kristi, she wears many hats and all of them extremely adroitly. So Kristi is a runner, a philosopher, a Substack author, and those are just some of her many achievements. Now, Kristi, the other day, you and I, just in the sort of prep for this episode, were talking about a sort of recent college reunion you'd had. And I wonder if you could just sort of set the scene a bit, just tell us a little bit about a couple of your reflections from that time.
Yeah, we were. And so I did 2 weeks ago, I went back to my 25th college reunion. And it's always amazing to realize that that much time has passed. And yet this theme came up throughout the reunion, like with a variety of people I talked to about how 25, 30 years ago, we were all struggling with some of the same things while we were in college, but we never talked about them. Everything was fine. We were all okay. And now we're willing to talk about them. And it just got me thinking about how when we can talk about how we're really doing and when we make authentic connections with people, we can have such deeper relationships. And, I can't go back and redo what happened in college, but I just thought that was an interesting thing that so many people, brought up and how much value we get when we can really share.
And in addition, I love that, in addition to you being a runner yourself, you're also using running as a sort of, as a medium, as a vehicle, if you will, for connecting people and bringing communities together. And I wonder if, before we introduce our excellent guest, you would just tell the audience a little bit about the nonprofit that you, and I think it's your husband, have founded, isn't it?
Yes. So I love that you are excited about this nonprofit. In 2017, my husband Mike and I started Athletics United, which is a Logan, Utah based nonprofit that's designed to build community through sport. And we had a growing refugee community, new American families coming into our town, and we wanted to do something to help make them feel like a sense of belonging and a part of the community. So we have free, kind of low barrier to entry activities we run. We just play soccer, and then we have free tutoring at the library. And the whole idea is that we can connect in a way that's really easy and makes people feel like they belong. So, in that vein of like authenticity, I'm really excited to introduce Andy Coutant. Andy spent his career living in this area of passion of his, where he shifted from product user to retailer to brand builder. And Andy, you've led products for Brooks and Asics and most recently the North Face. But when I read between the lines of your bio, I feel like what your real passion is in leadership and like building really authentic, meaningful cultures and making sure that people feel like they're part of a team that means something to them, which is, something that speaks a lot to me. And then we also learned in like the preamble to this conversation that you are competing in cowboy action shooting and that you're an astrophotographer. So I love this about people. They're like not one dimensional. So we're super happy to have you as a guest. And, I just how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Yeah, I'm doing great. It's a beautiful day here in Colorado, which is where I am right now. And yeah, I'm getting the opportunity to sit down and talk to both of you. I'm so interested and excited for this moment. Yeah, I'm doing great. Thank you so much, by the way, for that really nice intro. That was great.
Oh yeah, you made it easy. So I wonder, to kick this off, if you would just tell us a story about you growing up, like little glimpse into Andy growing up.
Oh, okay. Andy growing up. Andy grew up in North Jersey. The family was from Hoboken, right across the river from Manhattan, and then North Bergen, which is just at the top of the hill. There are all these little cities that are really
Yeah.
close to one another. Most of the families from Jersey City Heights, very dense city kind of scenario. What I would say that kind of shined through in a weird way really fast was I was super interested in nature.
Mhm.
Even though, sometimes the only nature in the whole neighborhood was the little space in the cement where that one tree had grown through, but I would stand there and look at that tree for an hour, looking at the bugs in the bark and stuff like that. So, yeah, that was something that really stood out. And then climbing. I
Mhm.
love to climb buildings and fire escapes and anything I could get up on to get a really cool view. And
Mhm.
that is actually probably what led me out west, um, to the Western United States. I know this is a little bit longer than what you asked, but I was in a library and I saw a book with a photo from Galen Rowell, who you may know, a very famous outdoor photographer who's passed. But he took a picture of Ron Kauk, a very famous climber in Yosemite Valley, and he was in like red sweatpants and a red headband and like no shirt, and he was like climbing next to Yosemite or close to Yosemite Falls. And when I looked at the photo, as somebody who was like climbing around on buildings and loving nature, just the scale
Yeah.
and the awe was like, I was like in a trance looking at it, and I was like, oh my god, I've got to go to this place. And that became kind of a driving force to get me out of the east and heading west. Yeah.
That's awesome. Great story.
Yeah, incredible. And I love the idea about you sort of like climbing up fire escapes. And, you know, did you ever get into any sort of like scrapes, Andy? Did you ever get like stuck, or like what was the reaction of like family and friends as you were sort of climbing all of these sort of urban exploration elements?
Yeah, remember I was a Gen X kid, so there was a lot of unsupervised time. Parents were working, latchkey kind of thing. I mean, my parents, I love my parents, and they're the greatest in the world, but they we were pretty feral and unsupervised. So, did I get into scrapes and problems? Oh God, yeah.
Yeah.
But it didn't panic them as much.
Mm.
Probably the ones I remember panicking them were things like my grandfather used to take us fishing on the beach at the ocean, and they would have all these jetties that would go out along the ocean. And to me, the rocks were just super interesting, and the creatures in between the rocks and all that stuff. So they were like, "We're gonna catch stripers today," and I was like, see ya, and they would wind up looking for me and stuff. I was terrible. And I'm sure I put lots of gray hairs on that group, my grandfather and my grandmother, when we'd be out there. But yeah, I was always off exploring. Yeah, always off exploring in that way.
Yeah, it really reminds me of my childhood as well. So I grew up in a tiny, what we call here in the UK, a hamlet, which
Ah,
means that it basically had only one sort of amenity, which was a pub. There
mhm.
was a bus that came once a week. The library came to our to our hamlet, but it was in a bus and it would come once a month. There basically, like, everywhere was like a 12-mile walk. It was literally in the middle of like deep countryside here in the UK. And me, my sister, and a great friend of ours spent a lot of our time in this massive wooded area near where we lived. And we'd just go off and sort of just shoot each other with air rifles, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
just
yeah,
get up to
yeah, yeah, yeah.
hijinks. Do you know
BB
what I
BB
mean?
tag. Yeah, BB rifle tag. Yeah, we did it all the time. Yeah.
No, not BB rifles, but like
Oh.
the sort of like the proper air rifle, the one where you sort of break the barrel, put the little like lead pellet in, and then basically like
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
BBs are actually shot by air, so yeah, very similar in that way. Yeah, we'd have to
definitely.
wear really big, thick coats and like helmets, and we'd be like only two pumps because the more you pumped it, the stronger it
Oh,
got.
this is
Right, so you'd be
right.
like only two pumps, and then you'd be down behind a tree, and you'd hear your friend, and you'd be like, "You pumped 3 times, I heard it," and yeah, no shooting in the head. Yeah, yeah, good
Definitely.
times.
Um,
Totally feral.
Anybody that has basically now just taken Andy, other than literally at his word about 3 pumps, you can't listen anymore to this podcast. You're basically fucking dead to me. So just move on, you dirty, dirty bastards. Get your mind out the gutters. Andy, as you know, Kristi and I like to explore on this podcast, and this won't be the last time that I get Kristi on, because she is a freaking awesome co-host. So just that's not a promise, Kristi. That is a threat. You will be coming back.
Okay, I'm in.
You're in. I'm delighted. But we explore a single story, and I guess the question I wanted to understand from you is like, what was the status quo before the decision, before this story really kicks off? Because we spoke a little bit about it before we met, and would love to hear about where you were at before we come into the story that we're going to explore.
What was the status quo? Meaning, where was my mind?
Yeah, your mind and your body, and like your work, and like where were you in your life, Andy?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I was, I think what eventually the kind of decision that happened would always kind of eke in organically, but I was very focused on doing all the right things, productivity, and do this, and this outside agency came in and said this would help your process, and we're going to make more money this way, and your line will be better that way, and the product will be great this way. And I think you're younger in your career, so you're like, yeah, I got to absorb all that and take it in and listen. And so I was much more affected by the outside and new ideas and new processes. And I'm sorry, I don't mean that I'm not affected by new ideas now, but things less than people and feelings, it's kind of like, wow, I've never even used this analogy, so this should be fun. It's kind of like dogs, right? So somebody could say, hey, the new neighbor is super nice, and I don't know, I'm just, they're a pastor or whatever it is, just whatever occupation you think is going to be honest and nice and whatever it is. And then they come walking over, and the dog starts barking at them like crazy. And you're like, oh, the dog senses something here that might be really weird. Even though everything I've heard is safety and cool, the dog knows there's something wrong, right? And I would say I was listening to all those things, and then later I learned to be more of the dog. I learned to be more of the dog later on. Yeah.
I love that. So to help situate the audience, tell us where you are right now, physically, where you are right now in your career, before Kristi then comes on to sort of ask you actually about the decision that you actually ended up taking.
Physically, I'm in Colorado. I'm taking a break right now. I had back surgery about 5 months ago. It was my third back surgery, and it was difficult. The recovery's been slow and painful. A lot of 2 steps forwards, 1 step back. So I'm really spending a little time to take care of myself and get myself back to 100%. We can all kind of get caught up in taking care of others, which is always kind of my default. Everybody else gets taken care of first, I'm last. Work, that could be work. It could be people on your team. It could be, and you kind of neglect yourself, and then you're not really good to anybody when you're in bad spots. So that's where I am right now, physically in Colorado, and I'm taking a little break to get myself back to 100%, physically as well as mentally. And I just left the North Face, where I had been working for just over 14 years. Yeah, just over 14 years. And that was both fantastic as well as, well, fantastic, exciting, amazing, all of the wonderful things you could think about. But also when you're leading a team in a business that big, especially through so many different transitions, it could really be stressful and wear on you as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so Andy, gosh, I mean, everything you're saying, I feel like I can totally relate to, and I'm sure a lot of listeners can. You know, you get through, it's like what got you through the first half of your career is not the same set of stuff that's going to get you through the next half of
No.
your career. And you're in that like liminal space of how do I jump from, I heard it described as like fluid intelligence, you know, you're gathering all the information and doing all the things. Like you talked about these like outside sources, consultants, and you're trying to jump to like this crystallized intelligence where you have your own wisdom. And it's like, well, I need to be the dog. My dog, you know, has a lot of wisdom. Like I need to just show up authentically in that way. And so I left a job after 14 years too, but tell us
Oh,
about like your decision to leave the North Face. You know,
um,
what was this decision? How did it come about? And yeah, just talk to us about that.
well, I think, it was a lot of years. And as I said, I think there's, let me say, let me rephrase that. Beep, beep, boop, boop, boop. I think there's something that you mentioned earlier, right? And that's being your authentic self and making connections. And I really felt like I built a team at the North Face that the culture had grown. It can run without me, right? Turnover super low. You developed the young leaders into cultural leaders themselves, right? So it's almost a self-regulating scenario, right? And as I got a little older and my interests started to change a little bit because I'm still an obsessed outdoor person. Ice climbing is still my favorite activity, but I started picking up new
Please, can you take
interests
me
as
ice
well.
climbing, Andy? Please,
Will
can you
I?
take me? Can
Oh,
you take me ice
absolutely.
climbing?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I love
Kristi as
taking out
well.
people. Yeah. 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 It's fantastic.
Fuck yeah,
Yeah.
this is a date. Let's make this
Oh,
happen,
absolutely.
friends.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, you know, and as I felt like I had done a lot for the brand. I'd made my mark. I had really got the place to a really good team, the team to a really good place, and it could run and really well. I thought, what else could I affect? Right? Where can I go? What learnings can I take and bring them to other places and help other places and cultures? And that sounded exciting because early in my career, I was a big turnaround person. So I always seemed to be coming in and turning around something that was off the tracks. And at the North Face, the reason I think it was 14 years is because the truth is, right, and this is all very public, I had what, 7 presidents, right, in 14 years or something, right? So it's not negative to that. That's all just public information. But there's a little bit of an aspect that instead of me having to leave to find the excitement and management and all that other stuff, it just kind of changed while I was there. So, it got stable and yeah, and now I'm kind of looking for the newest thing that excites me and the newest place that I could make people's lives better. It might sound a little bit weird, but yeah, I want to make people's lives better. Yeah.
I love this, and it sounds like you've gone from turning around businesses to turning around lives, and then of course
That's
the
such a good way to
reality.
say it.
Oh, so- thank you. But it's a symbiosis between all three of us. But what when you've come into these sort of turnaround situations, I'd love to hear a little bit more about the North Face experience. Like what, and we'll get on to your later career, of course, but what sort of challenges were you presented with when you first came to the North Face and they were like, did they realize there was a problem there? Or did you have to hold up a mirror? The thing I love most about doing this show is the chance to talk with leaders about a decision that they may never have spoken about before. Now, this might sound like a podcast party trick, but I promise you it isn't. In fact, it's the same skill that allows you to unlock what your consumers truly want and need. And using that raw data, you can then build more franchise products. The problem is that most brands have currently lost this. Insight teams have been cut, while the number of consumer questions and questions about consumers have only multiplied. And it means that most leaders have no idea where they stand. Closing that gap starts with the Consumer Delight Diagnostic, a structured interview that I run with you that allows me to score your team's insight capabilities and shows you exactly where you stand fast. 90 minutes, fixed fee, $2,500, no pitch. If you're serious about earning your consumer's delight, it starts here. Get in touch at outrageousinsight.com. And when you did hold up the mirror, was that liked, or was that felt like, wow, who's this guy to come in and hold up a mirror to us?
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, I had to come in and hold up a mirror. I think there were a few people in the organization that understood at that time where some of the shortcomings were and issues. But as you know, holding up a mirror is, wow, it's a touchy subject, holy moly. And, and I think early in my career or younger, right? What's that line? People are upset. People don't like to hear the truth. And in a lot of ways, it's true, but also it doesn't get you anywhere. So you can't get anywhere by just basically using that as an excuse for you having terrible delivery.
Yeah, I've heard the phrase, better to be confronted by the truth than comforted by a lie.
Yeah.
And that's one that I've sort of really tried to hold on to, but it doesn't necessarily win you any popularity contests.
No, and that's really hard. It's easy when it's easy. I guess it depends on the situation, right? Because I've come in before where one time I came into a job, not the North Face, but I came into a job and the guy who had hired me the day before I arrived fired 90% of the department. So wow. I walked in and of course they all thought I was responsible for it. I had nothing to do with it. And that's a really different situation. You can imagine how insane that was because we were literally like, where do they even keep the color chips? I don't even know. And you'd be like looking through filing cabinets. They were the weirdest, but those things build character and they teach you lessons, and one of those lessons is that, if you come in and the North Face, by the way, had a lot of really talented people. And I think one of the things that was so stark to me is all of these talented people, all of these really good people, and yet the product that was coming out at that time in certain classifications was mediocre or poor, right? So what is going on in here? I don't understand what's going on. So that's a different thing where, you're not starting with new people. You're trying to motivate them and get them on board and work in a different way. So your delivery has to be really thoughtful.
Totally. Because there's like a misalignment. I mean, what you're describing is this misalignment between your brand culture values and then the product that you're delivering. Mm-hmm. And when you're new and you're trying to hold up this mirror, it feels like you'd have to tread this line of being defensive versus being judgmental, and also recognizing the assets, in people that you have. How do you do that well?
A lot of self-deprecating talk. Yeah, definitely. It's really funny. People might think that's a joke, but it's true. You've really got to be vulnerable in front of people and tell them stories about, things you've screwed up. And this looks a lot like the time I did this, or whatever that is. And you got to find, everybody's got their own style. Not everybody could do that. Not everybody could be, I'm like super transparent. And not everybody has the same style. So everybody's got to find their own way to get there. And but yeah, you really got to be vulnerable and authentic and be honest and really do it from a place of objectiveness, right?
Yeah.
So a great example would be a designer who loves an item, just absolutely loves an item. It's like their pride and joy. They designed it. It's amazing. Their friends love it. All their designer friends love it. And I'm not trying to make it about like designers, but like these are
Hmm.
people who have a different taste level, right? And yet we sell none of them. No, none of the customers don't buy any of it, right? So you're like, okay, so what are we talking about here? Do you want to be known for this, or do you want to just keep making, which to me is a frustrating cycle, really cool stuff for just you and your friend to be excited about, and then just out of the line every year, right? So that's not what you want. You don't want that. You want to be known as the person who redesigned the base camp duffel, or
Yeah.
redesigned the Borealis, or made the Wawona tent, or whatever. You want to be that person, and to do that, you really have to lean into your consumer insights and what's going to excite them, and then find a way to marry
Yeah.
that with your vision.
Hmm.
And so it's really interesting how you have to go through that process of bringing them along. Yeah. And
Yeah.
motivating
And
them to get there.
totally. And well, I mean, and that speaks to your point. I mean, Patrick, you talked about, turning developing people, turning others around, but that's what developing a good culture and good leaders is all about, I think, is helping people see beyond the world through their eyes only and understand how you can apply your wisdom and knowledge with the insights of everyone around you to create something that's really special and resonates. um so, Andy, tell us, like, what can others learn from your experience? I think one of the values of this kind of conversation is that it is authentic, and you see people who you look up to and you're like, "Oh my gosh, they were a VP at North Face," and you think one thing, but then when you sit down and you talk to someone, you realize they're just another human being and they
Mhm.
also have things that they've gone through and experiences. And so, what's something that someone else, a listener, can learn from your experience?
um, don't waste a moment and not learn something, right? People always feel like I wasted time. Well, if you learned something, you didn't waste time, right? So, but write it down. Know what that is. Put it in your toolkit later on so you can reference it. So I think being okay with uncomfortableness and ambiguity and learning from that as it happens, cutting yourself a break. You don't have to be perfect. As a matter of fact, I think employees really love when you are imperfect, and they actually respect you more when you're like, hey, I think this is what we should do, right? And ultimately, it's my decision. So it's not a giant democracy, but good God, one of us isn't smarter than all of us. So let's sit down and talk about this and tell me all your great ideas, and let's figure this out together. And then people get vested, and that's one of those moments where you didn't have to show up as like the leader and knew the direction and just, that kind of thing. And the truth is, it just makes a better culture and they're better vested in all of that in the first place. So being open, transparent, vulnerable, I think is really important. And then staying on that subject of culture, I think my experience is that anybody could have a hit in product. Anybody can grow a business. And I don't mean it like flippantly, anybody. I just mean like even a broken clock is right twice a day, right? But if you want to do it and you want to do it well and really have low turnover and happy people in their personal lives as well as in their
Mhm.
in their work life, if you want to smile every day you come into work, if you want them to be high performers for multiple years, right, the long game, you really got to work on culture,
Yeah.
and that's super important. And I think the one thing that I think to me becomes transparent is people sometimes think they know what culture is. This is a really funny thing. And they're like, we're all going to go out hiking together today, you know, or something. And they'll do that like once a month. But then when they're in the office, they're kind of jerks to one another, right? And culture is not a big event, right? It's not a one moment. It's not a big, those are great things, but it is the everyday attitudes, behaviors, and interactions, the little moments that happen. As a matter of fact, there's a leader that I loved, and this leader was such a wonderful human, but always booked constantly. And I could tell you half the meetings were worthless, right? Because half of meetings are worthless. But I would beg that leader to leave like an hour open in the middle of the day and ask them to just walk around and walk behind somebody and notice, you know, a picture of their kid on their desk. You know, notice the fact that they've got a poster of, you know, some band over there, you know, just be human, you know, and you've literally got to work at it. It's like tending a garden. You can't just do it once and it happens. It's like every day you've got to do something. And so I think culture, you know, when people talk about culture and good culture, it's work. It's got to be a focus of yours. And you should really take some time to read a lot, read and get other people's input about like great little tools or what really culture is and all that kind of stuff. So sorry, I kind of got away from me there.
Yeah.
But,
No, I have two follow-ups. One, I just want to say I love what you're describing about noticing the little things. You know, I had someone describe culture to me once as like it's the water you swim in. You know, it's not the big thing, you know, the big shark over here. It's just what surrounds you. And when you know the little things about the people that you're working with, and it makes a big difference. And I think sometimes we forget to pay attention to that small stuff because we're so focused on a task. And I wonder if you could just riff a little bit on what's something that someone could learn from the decision that you actually took. You know, I think a lot of people are in this similar situation where they're like, I feel kind of itchy in what I'm doing. I know I need to make a change, but how do I do that? Like, what's something about how you made this decision to move on from something that you had built and created? And what's something that someone could learn from how you did that?
I'm thinking really good. I think it's way more uncomfortable than people think it's going to be. And you got to get really comfortable with that because you just, it's super weird to be vulnerable. It's super weird to be transparent. It's, you know, like your team, I've seen my team literally, people have talked to me after certain meetings or certain things you say, and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe you said that. Thank you so much for saying that in the room. And I'll, you know, an example would be, you know, hey, I got to go to the so-and-so meeting and I got to do this and I got to do this. And I said, well, you know, I think it's really important. You've got to do this other thing here. That's the most important thing you need to do. And they say, but I can't, I don't have time. And then like, I'll sit down, I'll be like, show me your calendar right now. Just if you want, if you're comfortable, you don't have to, we could go back to your office. And it's great because they pulled up their calendar on the screen. It was a room. It was my weekly team meeting. There was like 12 or 14 people in it. And it was a great teaching moment. And I was like, okay, what's happening in this meeting right here? And I was like, okay, so that's an email. Just have them send you the decisions that were made, right? And a lot of it is because they feel, especially when they're more junior, you know, and the person calling the meeting is more senior, they just don't know how to get out of it. So then teaching them things like the soft catch. Hey, I really want to be in this. I've got a lot going on and my boss is kind of giving me a different direction. Would you mind if you guys just send me something later on and stuff, or for the next week or two, I'm out of it. You know, they're really kind of soft catch and proactive disengagement.
Yeah.
Proactive disengagement. So
I love it.
So
That
that
sounds
kind of
like my
transparent.
parenting style, Andy.
Yeah. So that kind of proactive or transparency to like learn together as you go.
Yeah.
So I think those are the kinds of things that as you're making this decision, you're going to have to get comfortable with that uncomfortableness. And like now at this stage in my career, right? I walk in places and they'll be like, "Hey, the presenter is the presenter can't present. You have to present to 400 people." And I'm like, got it. Just tell me what subject you want me to talk about. So at this point in my career, that's real easy, but it's only because I had to go through all of the years of the really uncomfortable, weird stuff to get to that level of comfort with. Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And I just listened to, and in fact, I made a massive mistake this morning because in my sort of weekly newsletter, I sent out a link saying, listen to this story all about the founder of Hyundai Motors, and then I put the wrong link in it. So one of the things I like to do when I make mistakes is to run a mistake cake party. And so what you do is you basically are like, here's the fuck up I made. I've brought a cake that I've baked. You can't buy the cake. And then you give everyone a bit of cake. And what happens is the let's call them the mistake maker gets to basically just talk uninterrupted for 5 minutes about what happened. And then everyone else then gets to speak for another 20 minutes, where what they're doing is not critiquing the mistake maker, but are essentially looking at the systemic sort of interruptions that could be made to like do that. Pre or post mortem is another way of thinking about this. It's just that this has got cake, which I always love. But the reason I mentioned the guy from Hyundai was that he had this incredible life, right? He grew up in North Korea. His dad was a subsistence farmer. They got so poor at one point that they were eating tree bark. He had basically left North Korea 3 times, and his dad came and got him twice. And then on the third time, he basically walked away with the family's only cow. And essentially, the dad was like, "If you take the cow, we're all going to fucking die. Nobody is going to live." And he still went. He had his business taken over 3 times during various sort of wartime emergencies and occupations by other powers. And in all of that, he had this phrase, "There are no failures, only trials." And I was like, wow, that is a baller move. That is a total baller move. It's like so good. So, Andy, you've given us so much. I mean, I can't believe that 36 minutes has just gone so quickly. You're either going to feel like, you've just had like a sort of, had like a pleasant spa, or that you've been and played like a high intensity squash match. And I can't really work out which you're going to say to your friends, family and loved ones afterwards. But hopefully it's been pleasurable for you, because it's certainly been pleasurable for us. But I'm wondering, who would you next like to come and sort of be a guest on this show? Who would you like to pass the baton on to?
Oh, wow, you didn't warn me about that question. I mean, some of these you haven't warned me at all, but let's see. Who would I like to see be a guest? Can you get Bracken Darrell, the head of VF?
I mean, we can try.
Yeah, I mean, that would be really good. And the reason I say that is because he's the most casual guy in the world. He's like super casual, and it's really nice because usually, when you're at that level, people are like super buttoned up, they have a voice that speaks like this and everything is perfect, and he's just not like that at all. And it was so refreshing. And one of his first things, he was like, "Yeah, I'm sure a lot of you have imposter syndrome. I always have imposter syndrome." I was like, I like this guy, so I like when people at higher levels are super like transparent and honest about things like that. So he's be really interesting. Yeah.
I think he'd be great. All right, Patrick, you have a task.
Your
I
mission,
think
Patrick and Kristi, should you choose to accept it. We
Dun-dun-dun-dun.
don't call
what
it
we
the
let off.
Impossible
Dun,
Mission
dun,
Force for
dun,
nothing.
dun,
You know,
dun,
it's like, I just want one of those tape cassettes that basically like sort of fizzes off after we do the
Yeah.
what guest is coming next type question. That'd be amazing. Like your mission. No, okay, let's not do that thing. But yeah,
Yeah.
it'd be great. I want to just have like a tape cassette. Let's move on.
And all your questions should be really weird and awkward, by the way, for him. That's what would make him just...
Have I not done that in this interview?
You
Andy?
have. Yeah. I know. It's not critique. I just like, it's... How did you arrive at such a successful place? I mean, you're not doing that at all, but I think you really find him interesting to ask him weird stuff like, what was the worst basketball game you've ever played? Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? I will just tell you one fun fact. So I basically was a few years ago. I sailed across a very perilous piece of ocean called the Bay of Biscay, which is between France and Spain, and it's very perilous because it's a very, very busy sort of merchant navy sort of shipping lane, as it were, and I was on watch with basically a really, really great friend of the family and a great friend of my dad's. And we were both falling asleep at the wheel, in really mountainous seas and loads of ships around us and this sort of thing. I thought I was definitely going to die. I thought it was just going to fall off the side of the yacht and whatever. And I just turned to my friend, to my dad's friend, and I was just like, right, you're going to have to tell me about your top 3 shags. And he was like, what? I was like, you're just gonna have to tell me about that because that's gonna be basically like what keeps me awake. And he was just like, for fuck's sake, Patrick, I'm not talking to you about that. Like, this was my dad's squash buddy, for fuck's sake. But I was like, yeah, just tell me top 3 shags. And this guy was like, sort of, yeah, exactly. And he was like,
your life depends on it.
Yeah, exactly. And he was like some sort of like, not quite, but like some sort of like Deloitte or Barclays like fucking banker or something like that in real life. So like, he's never been asked that question. So like, imagine if I basically just like, we got the VF CEO on and we were just like, right, just tell me about a recent painful medical experience you've been through. And he was like, yeah, well, tell me about your latest submission to the IRS. No, let's not do that. But you know where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
Note to self, ideas for a new
There
podcast where I ask leaders in the outdoor industry inappropriate questions. Okay, let's move on.
Oh,
Save
well,
me,
this has been
Kristi.
great. One of the things we like to do at the end is, just to connect to the audience is what's your ask for people who are listening? And it could be anything.
Be light in the world. Really. I mean, I know there are hard things going on every day, but I think if you look at tons of studies, happiness is in people's heads. It really is. Happiness lives in your head. I mean, there are people that are destitute and have nothing and they're super happy. And there are people who have everything in the world and they're miserable. Happiness is an attitude. It's really, really hard. I don't mean to degrade or downplay how hard it is, especially some people's personal situations and stuff like that. But I guess my only point to that is, try to make the choice, get a good memory that you start every day with, try to make the choice and try to leave it in a better place and leave people in a better place than when you met them, so try to be light in the world.
I love that. It's a great visual too, just to think about people walking around and being that light for someone else too. Like not only for yourself, but how does that rub off on someone else?
Mm. Folks, we have reached the end of this, and I know that some of the listeners will be thanking their lucky stars that they won't be hearing any more of my catalogue of filth after this interview. You two have both got A stars. I've got a B- for my performance. No, don't say anything. I'm just basically throwing that out there, self-deprecating, like trying to own the frame. Yeah, exactly. Don't game recognizes game. I know you both well now, so it's absolutely fine. Kristi, thank you so much for being a co-host. Please come back again. It's always such a pleasure. I just love the way your brain thinks. folks, if you haven't subscribed to Kristi's Substack, please do so. Kristi, please just give a 15-second, just what's it called? Obviously on Substack, but how do people find it? How do people subscribe to it?
Yeah. Oh, well, thanks. This isn't about me, but it's called Noticing. And so, Andy, I think that's why there's like this neat connection between us, like noticing the little things in life is what I love to write about. So you can find me on Substack under my name, Kristi Spence, and then the name of my newsletter is called Noticing. It's free. So, yeah.
Fantastic.
Kristi, I if you don't mind, Patrick, to that point, it's one of those things that connecting that to light, noticing. Giving a compliment costs nothing. Nothing. Noticing something little on somebody and making their day. Hey, those are really cool shoes. For some reason, I always do it to kids a lot too. I'll be like, man, those are super cool shoes. The kids are always like, yeah, but like it costs me nothing. No time, right. Virtually no effort. And it's noticing those little things to make a connection with them and make their day better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I appreciate you as well, Andy. Thank you so much for responding to some random request on LinkedIn from somebody that you had never ever met, and now we've actually spent a couple of hours together, here and on across other channels. So I really, really appreciate it. I'm so excited to explore about your Night Sky Collective astrophotography thing as well, because like that is awesome. Really, really excited. So thank you so much, both of you, for a wonderful conversation today.
Thanks. Well, I'm super excited. I really appreciate it. And we're going to go ice climbing together as far as I know. So yeah. Yeah.
Where did I leave those Gore-Tex? Where did I leave those Gore-Tex salopettes? Just go and dig those out of the musty bucket of sort of failed sports that I have started and then not followed through. Unlike both of you, who are just like, oh yeah, I've just run an ultra marathon and I've just climbed up, the sort of the sort of ice shard on Mount Kenya. I'll be like, yeah. I was once the scorer for the third 11 cricket at school, so I didn't even play. I was just the guy who basically flipped over the fucking sort of like old-fashioned tin thing that said like 3 runs, 4 runs, and the worst thing was I didn't have a fucking clue about the instructions. On that bombshell, friends, if you've enjoyed listening to Light the Fuse, and I mean, who the fuck wouldn't enjoy such top quality entertainment as this with wonderful guests and co-hosts? Please like and subscribe on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. Would love some reviews up there, particularly given how we've now heard from Andy at North Face. We've got Helly Hansen coming up. We've got a couple of Nike folk coming up. We've got some really, really great new contributors. So thanks again and goodbye. Thanks for listening to Light the Fuse. If this conversation got under your skin, please consider signing up for my newsletter. It's called Read the Room, and it's where you'll find out first what I think about the interviews and the themes that we've covered, and also where you'll find out first who's coming up next on the show. You can find out more and sign up at outrageousinsight.com/read the room.